How you doing, guys? Good. All right. Well, I'm used to being the funniest guy on the podium. You know, I'm normally up with a bunch of preachers. I'm the comic relief. Now I'm the straight man, so please bear with me. We're going to talk about an issue, an under-the-hood issue today. A lot of people, when they think about church, they think, well, what do we do in church? We preach God's word, we sing songs, we offer praise, we serve in the community. And, you know, those are all good things, and it all does come down to God. When it comes to church and a church growing, a church reaching people, God's Spirit is number one. But there are some under-the-hood issues that are important as well. And today we're going to be talking about those things you probably never thought about, but they're under there. They're little underlying mechanical issues that are keeping our churches from reaching men. And so I want to start you off here with a pop quiz. I know it's early, but I'm going to put up two sets of values on the screen, if you could read those here, and I'm going to ask you, which set best characterizes the values of Jesus Christ and his true followers? And on the left, we've got competence, power, efficiency, achievement, skills, proving yourself, accomplishment, objects, goal orientation, success, and competition. On the right, we've got love, communication, beauty, relationships, support, help, nurturing, feelings, sharing, relating, and harmony. By show of hands, can I see who thinks that the left set is the best representation of the values of Jesus? Okay, a few of you do. It's probably because of where we are. Who thinks the right set is the best representation of the values of Jesus? All right, congratulations. Every audience that I've ever showed this to, audience of men, women, Christian, non-Christian, they always pick the right set as the best representation of the values of Jesus. Always. 95% of the time, people pick that as the values of Jesus. And then I show them where they come from. They're from chapter 1 of the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And in that book, Dr. John Gray identifies these as the values of Mars, the left column, versus the values of Venus on the right side. Now, 95% of Christians pick the right column as the values of Jesus. So you can see right away in the church and in the larger community, there is a bias toward thinking of Christ in terms of the values that come naturally to a woman. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, is where this bias came from and how we can begin to battle it so that we see more men in church. Let me give you some quick facts on the gender gap. The average church in America draws an adult crowd that's 61% female and 39% male. That's the average. If you count the adults in your church, you'll probably find 6 women for every 4 men. Almost 25% of married church-going women regularly worship without their husbands. Don't you have a significant number of Sunday morning widows in your congregation? How many Sunday morning widowers do you have? Not too many. Women are much more likely to attend church, Sunday school, and small groups. They're 2/3 to 3/4 of our volunteers. I was talking to a mainline pastor, and he says, wow, 3/4, I'd love that. 9/10 of my volunteers are female. He says, why do you think I wear a robe? I want to fit in, right? Women buy up to 75% of Christian products. There are millions of dollars in marketing for Christian products going after the female demographic every year. And according to studies, women out-lead, out-pray, out-disciple, out-witness, out-study, and out-give men. It's not just that there are more women in the pews. The women who are there are more active and more involved than the men. Here's a statistic that kills me. Young single men are practically an endangered species in the church today. What percentage of our church population would you guess are young single men age 18 to 35? What would you guess? Less than 5%. That's the future of our church. And fewer than 30% of boys being raised in church today will remain faithful to their teens and 20s. 70% are going to drop out during their teens and 20s. How many of you were raised in church? Let me see your hands. How many of you dropped out for a time during your teens and 20s? Quite a few of you. It's a common story. Are men less religious than women? That's the question I always get. Well, let's look at the facts. Hinduism, Buddhism, and Judaism experience no similar gender gap. In fact, isn't there a world religion out there who's very popular with men these days? What is it? Muslim men are publicly and unashamedly devoted to their faith. And of course, the early church had no shortage of men either. So something has changed. The fact is, men are interested in God. 90% of U.S. men believe in God. 5 out of 6 claim to be Christians, but only 1 out of 6 can be found in church on a given Sunday. The fact is, men love God but want nothing to do with church. So the big question is why? Well, I've summed up my conclusions in 4 bullet points here. It's hard to sum up a 200-page book in 4 bullet points, but I did my best. Here we go. Number 1, men think the church is for women, weirdos, and wimps. They do. Rarely spoken but widely believed among men is that if you go to church, it says something about your manhood. Number two, men feel like church is a waste of their time. There are better offers out there. Bill Gates was interviewed about his religion about 10 years ago. He claimed to be a Christian. And they asked him if he goes to church. Well, I rarely go to church. Well, why is that, Mr. Gates? He says, well, as you can imagine, I'm a very busy man. My time's quite valuable. And quite frankly, there are more valuable things that I could be doing with that slot in my schedule. I think Bill Gates spoke for millions of men when he said that. Number three, Christian culture leans increasingly toward the feminine. And we'll be having some fun with that later on today. And finally, and this is the big one, it's hard for a man to win at church. What do I mean by that? Win at church? You didn't realize church was a game, did you? Well, with men, everything is a competition. And if we can't win, we don't want to play, right? I mean, when I was a young man, I took up golf. You've heard of Tiger Woods? Well, I spent most of my time in the woods looking for my ball. I had no knack for the game, so after a couple of rounds, I cracked my clubs over my knee and gave it up. I knew I was never going to win. If men can't win, we don't want to play. And to illustrate this, I've set up a competition between two churchgoers, Tina versus Tom at church. And we're going to look at 10 key church-going skills, and we're going to keep score. Now, our first competitor is named Tina, and this is our little pregame lineup here. You can see she's got a nice religious resume here. She's, you know women like this. She goes to church every Sunday and Wednesday night. She's got the quilt-covered Bible and the miniman and the 3 kids and the piano lessons, and she listens to K-Love on the radio. You know gals like this? Our other competitor is named Tom. You can see he was raised in the Baptist church. He received Christ in '81. Just got back from a mission trip to Guatemala. Like most men, he doesn't read books. And his favorite thing about church is he loves his pastor's good sermons. So now we're gonna keep score, and as we look at 10 key church-going skills, let the games begin. Now, one of the first things we always do to men is we put them in small groups, right? How many of you men have been in a small group, like a Sunday school class, small group Bible study? Almost all of you, right? One of the first skills you need if you're going to be good at a small group is you've got to be a good reader. So here's what it looks like. So here we go. We got Tom, Tina, and the others sitting on those hard metal chairs reading their Bibles, right? You've all done that. Let's zoom in for a close-up here. You can see Tina's doing pretty well. Tom looks like he's lost in the Psalms. Well, here's the fact. Men are diagnosed with reading disorders at 4 times the rate of women. So and here's what we always do to men. We say, okay, Jim, would you look up 1 Corinthians 13:7? And Sally, would you look up Leviticus 4:13? And Bill, would you look up, we do that, right? Well, if Bill has a reading disorder, and he's not a good reader, he notices that the woman next to him is a better reader than he is. And he's sitting there sweating, oh man, I hope I don't get a verse with Nebuchadnezzar in it. Right? Because it's embarrassing. It's a little bit of an emasculation. So at the end of that round, our score is Tina 1, Tom nothing. Small group skill number 2 is this, speaking and expressing ideas. So there we go. I know why you're laughing. You've all been caught between 2 biblically literate women before, discussing the finer points of the second coming of Christ. Well, here's the fact. Women outscore men in tests of verbal fluency, right? We men, we think great thoughts, but it's often hard to get them out of our mouths, especially at 9:30 on a Sunday morning, right? So at the end of that round, it's Tina 2, Tom nothing. Small group skill number 3 is this, finger dexterity. Now wait a minute, what has finger dexterity got to do with going to a small group? Anybody? That's it. You got to flip through those fine little onion skin pages. So here we've got a shot. Here they're looking up their passages in the Bible. Let's zoom in for a close-up here. You can see Tina's doing pretty good. Look at Tom here. His fingers are like sausages. How is he supposed to find the book of Lamentations with those things? Well, here's the fact. Women outscore men by large margins on tests of finger dexterity. That's why women do needlepoint. None of you do needlepoint, do you? And if you did, you probably wouldn't admit it. This is why women do needlepoint and we go out and work on the car, because the parts are bigger. Fits our fingers. So at the end of that round, it's Tina 3, Tom nothing. Well, now we're through the small group skills, and we're going to go between services skill. And this is actually a very important skill, socializing. And it looks like this. If you're going to be a good churchgoer, you got to be good at socializing, right? And women are masters. I mean, the minute they walk in, oh, hi, how's your mom? I've been praying for you. How are the kids? Are you having your period? Oh, I know, it's just so, right? I mean, they just get down to it, don't they? Men are like, where's the coffee? Where's the coffee? Here's the fact. Women are generally better at polite conversation and small talk than men are. Okay? They're better at it. And so men notice. It's 4-0. Between services skill number 2 is this, hugging. And you're going to love this slide. Any of you go to a church where the pastor says get up and hug everybody and turn to your neighbor and give him a hug? A few of you do that. Do you love it? Do you love it? Depends on if you're standing next to a man or a woman, right? Right? Come on, admit it. Listen, I'm not anti-hug. I'm not saying that Christian brothers should never lock up. But we need to be very careful. We need to be very judicious about this in the future, because you have to understand what your visiting men think about the church. They're already a little bit wary about what goes on. And you know why that is? It's not our fault. Whenever they hear a story in the news about the church, what's it always about? Sexual abuse. Priest accused of fondling boys. Church debates, or gay marriage, or gay priests, or whatever, gay bishops, right? So the words church and gay are becoming intertwined in men's minds. So a guy finally gets the courage to come to our church. He sits down, and within 5 minutes, some big old sweaty guy says, brother, praise God. It's so good to see you. Give me the full frontal. Right? We do that. We do that. We're just trying to show the love of Jesus. But he's getting a very different impression. So we need to be careful about our hugging, because many men are uncomfortable with man-to-man hugging, especially in public and among strangers. Now, if you're in a small group and a guy's crying and he's a mess because he's getting a divorce, then it's perfectly appropriate. But as far as hugging strangers on Sunday morning, probably not the smartest thing to do. You with me? All right, 5-0. Worship skill number 1 is this. Now we're into the worship service. And the first skill, if you're going to be a Christian, is you got to love to sing. We sing more than any other religion on the planet. Now here's what it looks like. Tina's doing pretty good. Tom's still lost in the book. Well, here's the fact. Many of today's most popular songs in the church are what I call love songs to Jesus. And in fact, I need a volunteer. In fact, sir, would you join me up here? Come on up here. What's your name?
Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. Everybody welcome Jeff. Give him a hand. Now, Jeff, do you like to hunt and fish?
Actually, no.
He doesn't like to hunt and fish. Okay, sit down. No. Well, come here.
I'll go buy my balls from the back.
We'll pretend that you like to hunt and fish. Let's say we're out duck hunting, okay? So get your shotgun across your lap. We've had a great day out duck hunting, and you know, Jeff, I just appreciate your friendship so much. And I'd like to express my love to you using some words I heard in church. Jeff, hold me close. Let your love surround me. Your fragrance is intoxicating in our secret place. You're beautiful. You're beautiful, my sweet, sweet song. All right. Is anybody, I'm sure you're feeling uncomfortable at this point.
Yes.
Does anybody feel how weird this is? You see, Jesus Christ was revealed to us as a man. God could have sent his daughter. He sent his son. Okay? And when a man loves another man, he doesn't use romantic language like we're being forced to sing in church today. He uses the words of respect. He says, hey, Jeff, hey, man, you're a stand-up guy. You ever need anything? Call me. All right? I got your back. Whatever you need. You know, he's going to use respectful type terms rather than lovey-dovey type terms. Okay? Now, we used to do that in the church. They used to be called hymns. You remember those? Remember hymns? We expressed our respect to God. But now we're respecting tender love. And is it any wonder that we have this new phenomenon called praise skippers? Guys who stand out and drink coffee until the music is done, and then they come in. So anyway, give him a hand. Thanks. Thanks for coming up. So, anyway, at the end of that round, 6-0. Worship skill number 2 is this, showing emotion. So here we go. Tina's offering her praise to the Lord. Tom's a little less comfortable with that. Now, am I saying emotion in worship is a bad thing? No. I mean, a couple years ago, my son was running from the Lord. And one day he came back, and I went to church that Sunday, and they sang that song, How Great Is Our God, and tears just flowed from my eyes. Emotion in worship can be a very powerful thing. However, in some churches, there's an expectation where you're going to get emotional every Sunday, especially in our spirit-filled churches. Now, here's the thing about men. Men are taught from childhood not to show emotion in public. What do we teach our boys? Big boys? But big Christian boys come in and lose it. Right? That's the expectation. Now, that's all and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Emotion is good. But if we judge a man's spirituality by how many Kleenex he uses, the woman is going to win every time. Okay? So it's just a higher hurdle for the men. 7-0 for Tina. Worship skill number 3 is this, holding hands. You're going to love this slide. Does anybody go to a church where they invite you to hold hands across the aisles? Boy, men hate that. You know, it's all about the overgrip, isn't it? There's that uncomfortable moment where you look at the guy next to you and you think, okay, who's going to be the girl? Right? Here's the fact. Men ain't wild about holding hands with a dude sitting next to him. I don't need research to tell me that. So at the end of that round, it's Tina 44. Tom nothing. All right, worship skill number 4 is this, sitting still. So here we go. Tina looks like she's doing pretty good. Tom looks like he needs to scratch something. Well, here's the fact. Men have 10 times the testosterone that women do. It makes us fidgety. And when is our testosterone the highest? In the morning. Right? Why do you think men all want to be ushers? We get up and move around. So women are actually better at sitting still for lengthy sermons. Tina 45, Tom nothing. One more worship skill and we'll wrap up this competition. And this is probably the most important skill of all, attention span. Now, I have a series of time-lapse photos that was taken during a worship service. Here we are at the 5-minute mark of the sermon, and you can see everybody's doing pretty well. Let's look at 10 minutes. Well, we're still basically okay. 15. Up. Heads are going down. This brother in the back is definitely at prayer, wouldn't you say? 20 minutes. And 25 minutes. Here's the fact. We men pay closer attention than women, but for shorter periods of time. Now, if anyone doubts this, just give a man a remote control and a television. Right? Click, click, click. Honey, the kids are on fire. Don't bother me. Click. Right? It's just us and ESPN. All right. Final score. Tina 46, Tom nothing. Now I need to have our post-game wrap-up. You need to understand why this is happening. This is why Tina wins at church. There's this saying, your system is perfectly designed to give you the results you're getting. Well, our church system has designed. It's the ideal environment for verbal, sensitive, and studious people to meet God. Because that's what we do. Verbal, sensitive, and studious. That's what church is all about. So her natural abilities give her a slight advantage over Tom. It's not a slam dunk. You know, it's a 3-point, it's a last-second field goal type win. But it's enough for Tom to get discouraged. Meanwhile, Tom loves God but feels unneeded in church. Tom had a genuine encounter with Christ back in the 80s. He became a follower of Jesus. He's trying really hard to follow Christ. But he gets discouraged week after week after week because it's a little series of losses. And so he gets discouraged, and these are the results. Number 1 is discouragement. Number 2 is he becomes passive. You got any passive men in your church? Number 3, they start pulling away. And number 4, they lose all contact. This is where we are losing our men. Now, they'll make another excuse. They'll say, oh, that doggone preacher, I don't like his preaching. Or there's a bunch of hypocrites in that church. But really what's bothering him is he can't do well. Because we men hate to be incompetent. We hate it. That's why we don't ask for directions, right? But a lot of us feel incompetent in the house of God because of the way we've set things up. So now what I'd like to do is give you a testosterone break. This is just stand where you are, just take a real quick break, stand up, stretch, feel how good that is. Doesn't that feel great? That's the way God made you, buddy. It's not satanic, it's biological. Now, have a seat. I'll be done in 10 minutes, and then we'll take our big break, I believe. Hang with me for 10 more minutes. Now, here's the part that kills me. We start this process, we start weeding men out of the church very young. Our Sunday school system ensures that girls win and boys lose. Do you know that? The Sunday school we all grew up in was tilted in favor of the girls, because here's what we were supposed to do. Read aloud, verbalize, look up passages in books, memorize, sit still, and receive verbal input from a female teacher. Now, how many 7-year-old boys you know who are going to be good at that? You know, the reading centers of a girl's brain mature 18 months ahead of those in the boys. And we're finding in public schools that boys are being left behind. In Sunday school, it's even worse. So here's the problem. By age 10, we've already convinced a certain type of boy he's just not cut out for church, because he's been losing in church every Sunday since he was a little kid. The girl next to him has been a little bit better than he has been. Sunday School Jesus. I've got a picture here from a popular film. Anybody seen this film? So here we got a guy, he looks like he's been doing a little time in the weight room here. He's got a sword here, a logo drawn in blood. These are the popular images of masculinity that our boys see in the culture. I've got another logo here. This is from a video game called Grand Theft Auto. This is one of the characters in the game. You can see big muscles here. He's got a tattoo of a gun. He's got some bling here and 2 machine guns. These are the images of masculinity that our boys are seeing in the media. And now here's an image of Jesus from Sunday school. Which one would you follow into battle? Looks like he just came from a spa, right? This is the other thing that's hurting our boys. Every Sunday, there's this big movement in Sunday school now to take out the scary holy pictures that we used to see, you know, with Jesus walking on water and healing people and stuff. Now, in our Sunday school curriculum, it's wall-to-wall pictures of Jesus with children. Now, what's the problem with that? Jesus loved children, right? Well, here's the problem. From time to time, I'm invited to speak on a college campus, and I'll visit a girls' dorm room and a boys' dorm room. And in the girls' dorm room, you'll see a little shrine to her childhood. You'll see a doll, stuffed animal, hair ribbons, baby pictures. You go into a boys' dorm room, and there is absolutely no evidence the boy ever had a childhood. There is not a Tonka truck or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle within 10 miles of the boys' dorm. Instead, what kind of pictures do you see on the walls? Fast cars, muscled athletes, alcoholic beverages, and half-naked women. Right? Now, why do boys put those things on their walls? Because they're sinful? No, because they prove to the world that they are men. You see, when a boy reaches a certain age, he's anxious to put his childhood behind him. What did the Apostle Paul say? When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I reasoned as a child, but when I became a man, what did I do? I put childish things away. And yet every Sunday at 9:45, we show images of Jesus hanging out with children, so that when a boy reaches 13, 14 years old, what does he do? He throws Jesus into the same dumpster with his Legos. Psychologically, Jesus is a childish thing. If I could change one thing about the church, if I was the king of the church and I could change one thing, is I would take all these images out of the Sunday school curriculum, because we are poisoning our boys' minds with those images. And by the way, why did they take all those scary Jesus images out and put all these in? They did a marketing survey about 20 years ago, and they found out that middle-aged women were buying most of the Sunday school curriculum, and middle-aged women like pictures of friendly Jesus with children. Oh, we like Jesus with children and puppies. And so that's what Jesus looks like now, the Jewish camp counselor without the whistle. Oh, and then for some creepy reason, we always show pictures of Jesus hanging out with sheep. Ugh. Oh, the frat boys always love that line. We have a lot of feminine imagery in the church. And to illustrate this, I like to go down to the Blockbuster, and I always rent the same type of film. It's always the same film. It always features a hero who saves the world against impossible odds. Maybe his name is Neo or Spider-Man or Superman or Hancock or, whatever. Or James Bond. But it's always a hero who saved the world against impossible odds. In fact, here's one of my favorite actors right there. Anyway, now when my wife rents a movie, she rents a very different kind of film. Okay? She rents a film that features a heroine who finds a happy relationship with a wonderful man. Nothing explodes, no one dies. The purpose of the film is to find a relationship. Now, hear me. In the church, the gospel used to be about saving the world against impossible odds, but today we describe it as a personal relationship with a wonderful man. A man who loves you. A man who wants to be with you every day the rest of your life. Guys, is this good news? Do you really want to have a relationship with someone who will never leave you alone? That doesn't sound like heaven. That sounds like hell. I mean, when men want to have a relationship, do they say, hey, can we have a personal relationship? What? No, we say, hey, can we go fishing? Hey, I got tickets to the game. You want to go? Men express their desire for relationship in terms of activity. And what do you know? So did Jesus. When Christ called his disciples, he didn't say, come, have a personal relationship with me. What did he say? Come, follow me. Follow suggests a goal. It suggests a mission. We're going somewhere. Have a personal relationship with me suggests we're headed to Starbucks for some couple time. How many times in the scripture are we invited to have personal relationship with God or Jesus Christ? 0. That term is never used. Yet this term is the creation of 20th century evangelists who figured, hey, we can probably get more women up front if we change the gospel from a dangerous mission into a personal relationship. So be careful with this term. It is not biblical, and it is confusing. It is confounding the gospel on the way to the masculine heart. Now, wait a minute. At this point, I've always got a few guys in the crowd are thinking, wait a minute. I like a lot of this stuff about church. I don't mind the praise and worship. I love raising my hands. I don't mind, I weep every Sunday. Does that make me a girly man? No, that's cool. It makes you a church man. You're used to it. But what I want you to do, and what I'm hoping to do with this session, is to show you what it's like to be a guy inviting church. Or maybe a guy who's been coming for a while, but he's uncomfortable in the church. He doesn't quite know why. And my challenge to you is, how are we going to remove these barriers that are keeping that guy from experiencing the power of Jesus Christ in his life? Because there are man-made barriers that we have placed in the church between men and God. And the challenge is, how do we get rid of them? So what is the answer? First of all, let me tell you, it's not male dominance. It's not about men exerting their rights and controlling women under my thumb. That's not what we're talking about. It's not a macho church. It's not about turning the church into a guy thing. Okay? It's about restoring a balance between the feminine and the masculine. Now, I've got a little gauge I want to put up on the screen. This is our male-female continuity here, gauge. And on the left, we've got where most churches have their culture set, slightly toward the feminine in varying degrees. So what's the answer? Where do we need to put the balance? Right in the middle, right? Well, let's turn the gauge on and see. Aha. The way we get men in church is to be intentionally erring on the masculine side. Well, what about the women? Don't worry about the women. The women will be fine. Let me show you why. When you set your gauge on masculine, here's an example of what happens. I've got a picture of a woman here. She's using a 7¼ DeWalt circular saw. She's perfectly comfortable out on a construction site using tools, right? We look at that, looks perfectly normal to us. Now I've got another photograph taken of me and my wife in the store, and my wife saying, hold my purse for a minute, honey. You men been there, right? How do you like that? Standing in the store, holding a purse? How are you feeling about that? You're feeling about this tall. You want to just melt into the carpet, don't you? You see, here's the thing about men and women. Women are jazzed about the things of men, but men are utterly repulsed by the things of women. Women do masculine, but men do not do feminine. So if you set the gauge in your church intentionally toward the masculine, who are you going to get? You're going to get the men, you're going to get the women, and you're going to get the young people. If you set the gauge on feminine, which is where most of our churches are today, in 30 years, your church is going to be a bunch of old women scratching their heads saying, "Where did all the young people go?" They left when the men left. So, I wanted you to think different with me for a minute. Right now, we kind of opened up your eyes to some of the feminization that's gone on in our churches, the feminine culture we've created around Jesus Christ. And so what's our traditional answer? Well, we need to start a men's ministry program. And so what we do is we create this little bastion of masculinity, and we get out the super glue, and we kind of stick it onto the side of the feminine body. And we say, "Okay, guys, go be masculine in there. But when you come into church, the rules are be nice, be nurturing, be gentle, be sensitive, focus on relationships." Right? Well, what happens with most men's ministries? They're kind of on life support there for a while, and then eventually, after 2 years, most of them die. The average lifespan of a men's ministry is 2 years. 90% of men's ministries fail in the first 2 years. And I think they fail because they're incompatible with the feminized culture of Sunday morning. It's a ton of work to start a men's ministry, and only 20% of your guys will ever attend. So, if men's ministry is not the answer, what is? Do what you're already doing, but make it man-friendly. Do you go to a church that has a Sunday morning worship service? Then make it man-friendly. Again, I'm not saying make it macho. Just start tipping the culture more toward men's needs, towards men's way of thinking, men's ways of understanding. Do you do small group Bible studies? Same thing. Focus more on the needs of men. Start asking questions like, okay, how did Jesus reach men? And if that's how Jesus did it, then why don't we do it that way? Again, it's not about doing things in a macho way. It's about tilting more toward the way men understand things, the way men learn, the way men communicate. And the other thing you've got to do is think men's ministry takes place at 11 a.m. Sunday morning. You know, we have this impression that men's ministry is, a bunch of guys getting together on Saturday morning for burnt pancakes. That's not men's ministry. Your men's ministry is what takes place on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Your worship service, your regular stuff, is your men's ministry. So, why focus on men? And I usually put this slide up to get the pastors in the room excited. Studies have shown that when you focus on men, these are the things you can expect in your church: growth, health, unity, giving, greater retention rates, young people, more young people in the pews, and you'll turn your critics into cheerleaders. Studies have shown that when you have a core of enthusiastic men in your church, this is what you can expect. And there's one more reason: because Jesus did. Because Jesus focused on men. The rules for church growth have not changed in 2,000 years. When Christ came, he could have started a women's circle and a VBS, but he didn't. VBS is the biggest outreach in most of our churches every year. And what are we saying? We're saying that the way to build the church is by bringing children in. But how did Jesus start his church? Went out and found 12 regular knuckleheads and turned them into tigers, turned them into a fighting force for his kingdom. And those 12 regular knuckleheads changed the world. The way you grow a church has not changed. Go out and find 12 regular knuckleheads and turn them into warriors. Now, take action. I've got a few action items here for you as we close. I've got a website, www.churchformen.com. You're welcome to go there. There's lots of free materials you can download, including the Go for the Guys Sunday Action Plan. I have a lot of people saying, "Gosh, I'd like to try some of these things in my church. I just don't know where to start." Well, you can download this free action plan from my website. It's a 20-page guide. It shows you everything you need to know on how to do a man-friendly worship service. Try it at Father's Day, or if you really got the guts, try it at Mother's Day, because that's when all your visiting men are there. Another thing you can look at is my book, Why Men Hate Going to Church. And then I have a new book out, How Women Help Men Find God. I just finished this book. It's just come out recently. And men, this is air cover for you. Hand this to that influential woman in your church who would completely freak out if she knew you were targeting men, and have her read this book and say, "Look, this is why we're doing the things we're doing. This is why we're beginning to focus more on men." When women understand this problem, they are more than willing to get on board with the solution. So that's why I wrote How Women Help Men Find God. Thank you very much.